It's recording. So good afternoon, all of you. Day before yesterday, I suddenly faced a problem. Computer from my laptop suddenly restarted, and that's why I lost connection with all of you. I hope that this will not happen in future. So we were discussing about Raj Dharma of Shanti Prabha. We discussed about the several aspects of Raj Dharma. And today we will discuss about the last aspect, that is political obligation in the Raj Dharma. And this political obligation, it means that why people uh, or what should be the obligation of the people, right? And why people should obey the king or the state or rules or regulations, right?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Taha.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, sir, I think if you record through this link, then I think we don't get the recordings, sir. We need to join through that link only. We are not getting that recording file.
No, I think you can ask Prakash actually. So,
No, sir, I already asked, sir. Sir told me that he is not finding those recordings.
Yes, sir. Even I too asked sir for recording, but he was saying that he can't find any recordings.
so let me do one thing actually. So I can download my, recording. So the last 5 or 6
గట్టి మాట్లాడరు ఏం అర్థం కావట్లా
lecture has been recorded by me, or it's already there in my, desktop. So I will do one thing. I will
సార్
just
యువర్ వాయిస్
upload
ఇస్
all
టూ
my.
లో సార్
Yes, is it audible right now?
No,
Venkatesh?
sir. No, sir.
Uh, Let me see. Why it is too low? Let me increase the volume. Now is it okay? Venkatesh, is it okay right now?
No, sir.
Now can you hear me?
We can hear, sir, but it's very low, sir.
సార్ వెరీ టూ లో సార్
Oh, I don't know what I should do actually. I have increased the volume. No, I cannot do anything now. See, do one thing actually. I will upload all my talk in the YouTube, and I will share the link of YouTube so that you can see my talk on YouTube, and you will not face any problem, either visual or audio. Any problem you will not face, right? So here with this, actually, I don't know how to manage it if my voice is too low, right? So since it is being recorded, I think it will not be any problem in future also. So I will share the link with all of you. Let me first upload it in the YouTube, then I will do it. So we are discussing about the Raj Dharma, and today uh, the last aspect of Raj Dharma is there, that is political obligation. That uh, what is the obligation of the people? I mean, why people are obliged to the state or the state law or the king, right? In the Dharma Shastra, the Dharma or the righteousness is actually supreme and sovereign, and it is not the king. So as long as the king performs the Raj Dharma, then the king is supreme or sovereign. If the king is not following, then the dharma is it becomes the supreme and sovereign, not the king, and political obligation only till the king follows the Raj Dharma. So people are there, people know what is their dharma. If the king is doing adharma, then people will follow dharma and people will start disobeying, the king. So, using dharma, a king becomes a deity. Otherwise, he becomes a evil. So, the king is free from. So, the king is the form of dharma. So everything, centers around the king. Uh, it is the dharma which makes a king a deity, a god. Otherwise, if the king is not doing his dharma, he becomes an evil force. And we can take the example of all, uh, asuras who are king, Ashura king, right? So they were all, evil forces. So the king is the form of dharma. So living in an anarchy could be the worst thing. Hence, people should obey the law and king's order if he is able to maintain peace and order. Right? This is very important. That there is a possibility that the king may be doing right thing or the king may be following the Raj Dharma, but there is a possibility that people may not obey the rules, obey the direction of the king or obey the Dharma. Now in that situation, people are also afraid that if they will not follow these rules, regulation, order, then the situation may lead towards the anarchy. And in an anarchy, their life, liberty, and property will be endangered. So that's why, this afraidness towards, anarchy, pushes individual to go by or to work or behave or act according to the, dharma. So people should obey the laws and king's order if he is able to maintain the peace and order. So it is very much like, I told you it is very much like a semi-contractual state. If you remember, Hobbes' law or Rousseau, so till the Leviathan, protects the life, liberty, and property of individual, then all the individuals will obey the Leviathan. If the Leviathan uh, cannot protect all these natural rights, whatever these subjects they were enjoying in the state of nature, then people will start revolting against the king. And there is a similar kind of thought process is also here, that as long as king is maintaining the peace and order, people will obey the rules, regulation, king's order, and dharma, so that in a situation like anarchy will not arise, and people's right, liberty, property, and life, it will be protected. So people can live happily only if they live under the law. It's a very important thing. So people knew that, the citizens, the subjects, they knew that it is under the law they are safe. If they are not with the law, if they are creating problem for the law and order situation, if they are violating the law, then their life may get jeopardized. So people were very much conscious about this, fact. Since the king is the visible symbol of the God, since the king is the visible symbol of the God on earth, people should obey him for peace, and prosperity as he obey the God. That means as long as God has institutionalized that kingship, God has king is considered as the march of God on earth. So as long as the king is obeying, or the king is satisfying his oath, what he has taken before the God, as long as the king does so, people should obey the king. People should obey the king. If the king violates whatever promises he has taken before the God, then it gives a license to the people to disobey the king. Here you can also feel how the relation between the subject and the king is very much contractual in nature. So people should obey law for the fear of punishment. Force become the ultimate sanction of the government. So that is the moral ground that why people should obey the law. But there is a practical ground also, that why people must satisfy, or people must meet their obligation. And the practical reason is that fear of punishment. So since the state or the king has the power, sanctioning power, the king or the state can punish an individual, punish a violator. Now this, punishment gives a kind of fear to the people. So that's why no people wants to be, punished. So this fear of punishment is also another reason that why people should obey the law. Now a delinquent ruler is criticized for his non-performance, and he may also be punished for his wrongdoings. For example, if the king, disobey his oath or promises, what he had done before the God, now such a delinquent ruler can be, criticized, and he may also be punished for his wrongdoings. So it is not the king who punishes, even king himself can be punished. And people may not follow the king's order and may revolt and leave the state if the king fails to protect them, or cruel, or does not follow the Rajdharma. So what kind of punishment the king will get? The punishment in the form of that people will distrust that king, people will disobey that king, people may leave the state, people may be guided by the emerging leader who will be the subsequent king. Now these are certain, a kind of punishment for the existing king. So the king does not want to lose his kingdom. King does not want to lose the trust of the people. If people, distrust the king and kingdom, then it is a setback for the king. It is a kind of punishment for the king. The king may lose the kingdom, because entire kingdom of a king is because of the trust of the people. So it is the job of the king to protect the trust of the people. Now, what is the relevance of the Raj Dharma today? Right? This is important. The principles of Raj Dharma is applicable not only on king, but also on all rulers, government in democracy. That means Raj Dharma is also relevant today. That there may not be any concept of king today, but there are concepts like ruler, there are concepts like elite. We are also, we teachers in the university, we are also like king. We are also like leader, we are leading. If we will not lead perfectly, then the entire system will be jeopardized. So since we are leading, since we are leader, there is a relevance of Raj Dharma for us, for teachers. There is a relevance of Raj Dharma for politicians. There is a relevance of Raj Dharma for the bureaucracy. So Raj Dharma basically denotes the good governance. And now, good governance means what? It means the maintenance of the peace and order, protection from the internal and external aggression, happiness, prosperity, and welfare of the people. So all these three constitute what good governance means or all about. Now, Raj Dharma wants good governance to prevail in the state. Now, Raj Dharma guides towards, framing a just law, using the state force judiciously to maintain peace and order. So, the goal of Raj Dharma is to create a just individual, just society, just law, just system. And the just system will, strengthen, will protect, peace and order. Modern concept of right, equality, liberty, and justice is inherent in the Raj Dharma. So, one should not say that this concept of right, equality, liberty, and justice, these are the modern concepts. Actually, you can say that these are the old wine in a new bottle. I mean, in the concept of Raj Dharma, you may find the concept of right, you may find the concept of equality, you may find the concept of liberty and justice. So also, this Raj Dharma is also applicable to anyone who heads the corporate sector, who heads the business sector, or who heads in the political sphere, or who is a departmental head, or head of a town, or head of a village, or head of a family. Even the head of your family is required to follow the Raj Dharma. If the head of your family is very much ignorant, arrogant, and doesn't follow any dharma, then the entire family gets devastated. Entire family gets destroyed. And today you can also see and experience these kind of things are happening. The family is getting disintegrated. The university, the educational institution, especially I'm talking about India, is getting dysfunctional. I will use dysfunctional. Look at the political system, look at the social system. Why there is a degeneration? Because the leader, the ruler, the elite of the political or of the system are not following the Raj Dharma. So the concept of Raj Dharma is also relevant today. So this is how I am ending your what I will say, this Shanti Parva Raj Dharma, right? So now for 5 minutes there will be a kind of discussion. Then I will start Manu, the social laws, right? That will be a third unit. So I hope that from tomorrow onwards I will start taking the extra class from 4 to 5 and 6 to 7. And today I will start the Manu, and the rest Kautalya, then Angana Shuta, and then Barni, Abul Fazl, Kabir. So Kabir syncretism, I think we have to go in detail. Then Barni and Abul Fazl, I think I have mentioned their name. So again, we will spend some time on them. Then Kautalya, I am familiar to Kautalya because it is also taught in the modern political theory, modern Indian political theory. We are not modern Indian political theory. We are in general course of Indian political thought. Generally, this Kautalya is there, so I am very much familiar with it. But this Angana Sutta and the theory of kingship, this is something new for me. So before I start, Manu, the social law, I am giving you 5 minutes so that you can, if you have anything to say on this Vedvyas Shanti Prabha Raj Dharma, you can say it. Taha, is there anything to say, or you cannot hear me?
No, sir.
No, there is no questions.
No, sir.
Okay, okay. So let me start on Manu.
What are you doing?
Hello.
Tomorrow is Sunday, sir.
Sunday we can take the class. Now you have something in Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we will start from Monday actually. Okay then.
Okay.
The extra class I will take from the Monday onwards. Right. So let me start Manu.
When our
For
exam will be,
Manu,
sir?
on 7th, na? 8th I told
Yeah,
you.
yeah. 7th.
7th or 8th? 7th.
Yeah, 7th,
So
8th, 7th.
okay. 7th there will be exam, but after the exam I will take the class.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay then. Okay.
Exam pattern, sir.
Yes.
Seminar or paper. What is the mode of examination?
I think the similar mode I will give. Because this online is actually I am not comfortable on online. What kind of pattern you want? I cannot take your kind of presentation. It will
Sir,
take
paper.
more time.
Sir, then paper pen mode.
So what I am thinking that should I give you a kind of term paper?
So
Do you
paper
want
pen
to
mode is fine, sir.
Sir, paper
term
pen
paper?
mode is.
We
No.
we have
I am asking you. Should I give you a term paper? You know term paper?
don't know, sir.
Term paper basically means that I will give you a topic and you will describe, explore, analyze, and evaluate on that topic. So you have to, the way you make your notes, do you make your notes? You make your notes very systematically, very brilliant. You try to cover all aspect of a particular content, right? So certain aesthetic, values is also attached with your notes. So term paper is also like that, right? You take your own time. So it's not
Sir,
tomorrow I will, yes.
we can write pen and paper mode because we have to write other internal also, sir. So
Then it's okay. Then the similar pattern I will give. So I will give 3 questions. Out of 3, you will do 2.
yeah.
Okay then. Okay then. So let me start the Manu because time is also going. Manu.
Right exam.
Uh, yes, Taha.
10th. Sir, we will write exam on 10th, sir.
7th, yes.
10th.
From 4 to
10th.
5, 4 to 5
Not
you
Yeah,
will write the exam.
7th, okay, sir. Fine.
What is the problem?
Sir, I am telling we will give our exam on 10th, sir. 10th December.
10th or
10th.
7th?
10th, sir. 10th.
Sir, on 10th we are going for marriage, for Prakash sir marriage, so you should come conduct on 7th or 8th.
Taha, I think Venkatesh is saying that Prabhas, Prakash marriage is there on 7th, 10th. So that's why they want to conduct, they want to face exam on 7th. Is there any problem from your side?
Sir, actually, I don't have any recordings, sir. I missed many classes, 2 to 3 classes. Like on that network connectivity and your voice is also.
If possible, tomorrow I will send you all the links of my talks. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay then. So let me start. There should be no interruption. So the next unit is the Manu, Manu and his notion of social laws. Manu, the Manu Smriti. And Manu is the author of Manu Smriti. He is the first teacher to reveal the essence of humanity to mankind. After, Ambedkar burned Manu Smriti, and then, without reading the Manu Smriti, we often describe that Manu Smriti is a communal, discourse, or Manu Smriti is a bad discourse. But if you read closely, and those who have read Manu Smriti, I have talked with them, and to them, they also say the similar thing, that Manu is the first teacher who taught us the humanity, and he is the first legislator who has prescribed the norms of social life. Why you want to take Manu in a negative sense? Is it because he has talked about prevailing tradition of that time and society? He has talked about the burner system. You have to, have a hermeneutical approach in your understanding. And if you apply this hermeneutics in your thought, then you will find that Manu is the first teacher and he is the first legislator. And all these norms were subsequently incorporated in various Dharma Shastras and Samhitas. Dharma Shastra, Shastra and Samhita. All these norms were incorporated. And Manusmriti encompasses the pragmatic visualization as well as idealization of life, or how life should be lived. So Manusmriti is both practical or pragmatic and ideal. Why it is pragmatic? Because Manu, whatever he saw at that time, whatever he experienced at that time in his society, he tried to theorize it, he tried to justify it by giving certain logic relating to what should be the best for leading a good life. And this Manusmriti primarily concerned with dharma, which includes it primarily concerned with dharma, which includes and transcends the Western concept of religion, duty, law, right, justice, practice, and principles. Now, all these concepts like religion, duty, law, right, justice, all are, the Western concept. Now, Manu, he, in his Manusmriti, Manu includes all these concepts, but at the same time, he has gone beyond the understanding. He tried to relate this world with that world. In the Western political thought, there is no that world. Everything is all about this world. So Manu talks about this world and try to transcend this concept to the other world. The interpretation of Manusmriti is fraught with enormous difficulties today. However, it covers the entire gamut of human life, social obligation, duties of various varnas and individuals in different stages of life. Especially after the burning of Manusmriti by Ambedkar, the interpretation of Manusmriti, it faced many difficulties. Some interpreted positively and some interpreted it very, very negatively. But if you will become an ideological free person, then you may not hesitate to accept that Manusmriti covers entire gamut of human life, social obligation, duties of various varna, and duties of every individual in different stages of life. Now, a close look to the text reveals the richness and diversities of social, political, economic, religious, ethical, and aesthetic dimension of the life. So, in the Manusmriti, you will find the social dimension of life, you will find the political dimension of life, you will find the economic dimension of life, you will find the religious dimension, you will find the ethical dimension, and more importantly, you will find the aesthetic dimension of life. What you should do so that you will create a aestheticness in your thought and action. Now, Western scholars have examined the text Manusmriti from different perspectives. Sir William Jones was the first to translate this text Manusmriti into English. J. Duncan calls the book the India's great achievement in the field of jurisprudence. There are many Western scholars. They have, they have praised this book. Sir William Jones, he translated this book from Sanskrit to English for the first time, and J. Duncan, he calls these books that this is India's greatest achievement in the field of jurisprudence. So jurisprudence of India, Indian jurisprudence starts with Manusmriti. And Friedrich Nietzsche, he was full praise for this Manu writing and used it as a stick with which to beat Christianity, which he characterized as the victory of Chandala values. Friedrich Nietzsche, mostly, he's a right-wing ideological person. To Friedrich Nietzsche, this Manusmriti is actually a right text which can be used against, the missionary activities of Christianity, right? Which can be used. And he characterized that the entire modernity, which is based on Christianity values, and all these, modernity is nothing but the victory of Chandala's values. Chandalas means the last, they are, below than the Dalit. The Chandala's value. Manusmriti is all about the Brahminical value, and the highest is the Brahminical value and the lowest is the Chandala value. And Friedrich Nietzsche compared the modern society based on the Christian values as Chandala values, and he was appreciating, this Manusmriti, that it is a stick with which that Christianity can be bet. Christianity can be challenged. Now, the laws of Manu, there is an impression that it was created by priests for their exclusive use. Now, this is a very dominant, kind of, I will say that it is a dominant kind of, ideological acceptance that Manusmriti was created by the priest Brahmana for their exclusive use. I mean, for their use only. not for all, but for Brahmins. And it must be remembered that the term priest was at that time used in a wider connotative sense. He was held to be the, you know, paradigmatic human being, a complete and perfect example of mankind. So, Brahmana or the priest, Brahmana, and at that time, the concept Brahmana was understood actually, Brahmam Janati Itihi Brahmana. That means if you know the God inside you, then you can identify God in everyone. So you will be a Brahman only when you realize a God within you and after you realize God in everyone else. Now, this concept, priest or Brahmana, is actually a complete and perfect human being. Perfect example of a human being. And this priest and Brahmana, they were not selfish, they were very much selfless because their intention is to create a good society, intention is to understand the, human being, the all human being, all human being, their, uh, intention was to create a good life, to understand the others. Their intention is to understand themselves so that they can understand better. So the priest, though this, Manusmriti, it was created by the priest, but those priests were very much selfless in nature. They were not selfish. And many of the ideas expressed in the Manusmriti were not original and had already been articulated in the Vedic text. So whatever Manu said, it is not his own. Manu has collected everything from the Vedic text, and Manu has collected data from the uh, practical experience of people, right, at that time. And Manu captured the existing social practices and prevalent ideas and codified them in a text, and that's how Manusmriti came into existence. This text is valuable. The text is a valuable historical document that successfully synthesized and created a cultural paradigm, right? So this Manusmriti is actually a kind of synthesis done by, or a historical document that has been successfully synthesized by Manu, and this synthesis, is actually in fact a great work. So you cannot dismiss that Manusmriti is just a synthesis. The synthesis itself is a great work, and that created a kind of cultural paradigm of that time. So one can understand the Vedic period by reading, the Manusmriti, by reading, Arthashastra, right? One can understand the cultural paradigm of that time, and the text can be seen as complement to Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, Ramayana, and whose objectives were also the similar, right? So this Manusmriti can be compared with Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, right? And you cannot say that Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, these are all communal texts. So if these are not communal, then how come Manusmriti is communal? It was, I still believe that this hyper, sentimentalism, pushed Ambedkar to burn a text. And today also, there are some people, they want to burn the constitution. So this burning culture should not be developed by Ambedkar. So the main aspect of Manusmriti that deals with the social laws can be categorized as three groups. That the first, aspect of Manusmriti deals with Manusmriti deals with many things, and he has prescribed many social laws. But I have categorized three aspects, and Manu's position on these three aspects can help you to understand his understanding on social laws. So first is the Rajadharma, second is the principles of God, third is the Varnasrama and statecraft. So let me start with the Rajadharma. The seventh chapter of Manusmriti deals with various aspects of the Rajadharma, and its idea or seventh chapter ideas, it means, okay, let me take a pause, let me read it. Seventh chapter of Manusmriti deals with various aspects of the Raj Dharma, and the seventh chapters deals with certain questions. And what are those questions? That question relating to who should be a king, how the king should be educated, then what is the type of education that to be imparted to a king, then how can a king be elected, then what are his duties in personal life and what are his duties in the public life, then how is the preservation and integration of the social order to be achieved. So the seventh chapter of Manusmriti deals with the Rajadharma, and in that chapter, the answer to these questions has been, analyzed, described, and explored. True, though all aspects of the statecraft had been debated earlier, Manu was the first to synthesize the science of government and administration. So in the Santi Parva also, we discussed about how the king should be, right? So all these aspects of the statecraft that were been there earlier, that were being debated earlier, but Manu synthesized all these aspects and he created the science of government and administration of his time, that is called the Manusmriti. Manu was an ardent supporter of the divine right theory of the origin of the state, which considers state as the creation of God and God as the creator of entire cosmic order and is responsible for the welfare of the people as well as the harmonious functioning of the whole order. So Manu believes the divine origin of this state, where the God as the creator of the entire cosmic order. God is the creator of the cosmic order. Now he created the institution of kingship and the king as his representative on the earth to deal with the welfare of the people and to achieve the harmonious functioning of the whole order. Now, since the king was the most important unit of the entire state administration, Manu emphasizes the intellectual and moral qualification of the king. Since king is the head, king is the representative of the God, hence the moral and intellectual qualification of the king is very much important. And he is asked to follow the advice of Brahmanas who are learned. So the king has to follow the priest class. And who is a priest class? I just defined before that a priest is Brahmam Janati iti Brahmana. The intention of priest class is not selfish rather than selfless. Now that selfless priest should advise the king, and king has to follow the advice of that selfless Brahmana or priest, right? And that's how the king will get the intellectual and moral, or that's how the king will satisfy the intellectual and moral qualification. And that selfless Brahmana or king is to be learned in Veda and are in a position to control their senses, Pancha Indriya, 5 senses. So Brahmana, a priest, must be selfless, and this selfless quality is nothing but controlling his five senses, and the priest must have knowledge on weather. Now Manu's king was an ideal man, well educated, scholarly, efficient, and a person of high moral. He was free from sexual desire, anger, and greed. If you know these are the virtues. These are the virtues. What are these virtues? Now he is educated, scholarly, efficient, a person with high moral standard, a person who is free from sexual desire, a person who is free from anger and greed. Suppose the king has all the vices. Now a king having the vices cannot follow the advice of the Brahmana. So only a virtuous king can follow the advice of Brahmana. So the job of the king is to follow the Brahmana. Now without being virtuous, the king cannot follow the Brahmana. That's why the king has to have all these, virtues. Now Manu compares the personality of this ideal king to the ocean, which is deep from the within. Right? So king should be like ocean. His heart, his mind must be very much deeper from within. The king should not be superficial. The king must be very strong in his mind and in his heart. And Manu also prescribes certain virtues a king had to possess. The king had to be free from corruption, but the king has to be free from corruption, but true to the dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So king should not be corrupted. Rather than the king must be righteous. The king must give importance to the artha of the life. Artha means the meaning, goal, and purpose of the life. The king must understand the meaning of life, and the king must, satisfy the desire and pleasure for the subjects, and the king also do something so that the subjects in his kingdom will get the moksha, will be get a kind of elevation from birth and rebirth system. And since the king is the chief executive of the state, he should also possess qualities like Sam, Dan, Dand, Ved. It is also mentioned in the Kautalya Arthashastra also. Right? The similar kind of theory or thought that were prevalent in the Shanti Parva, that is also there in the Manusmriti, and that is also there in the Kautalya Arthashastra. Sam, Dan, Dand, Ved. Sam means you have to make your opponent equal to you, becoming a friend. Dan means you are giving a kind of resource, material or non-material resource. That means through punishment. Bhed means creating. Bhed means basically it is a diplomacy, creating a difference. Right? The king must have all these qualities: Sam, Dan, Dand, Bhed, because king is the chief executive of this state. So here I am stopping. I will continue on Monday actually. On Monday we will continue this Manu and his notion of social laws. So thank you. If you have any query, you can ask me. Or if there is any network problems, yeah, I'm very much, I'm helpless actually. I cannot do for any technical problem or network problem actually. But tomorrow onwards, if I will upload all the links in my YouTube channel, I can share the link so you can see my talk, and you can ask me in the WhatsApp, right? So thank you very much.
syllabus of
Sir,
exam.
Yes,
Sir, exam syllabus.
exam syllabus.
Yeah.
Uh, exam will be on, actually, I did not cover it. Exam will be on your second unit. Shanti Parva.
Okay, sir.
है ना?
Sir, it's on Monday, right? Monday or Tuesday, sir?
Monday. Monday 4 to 5, your second internal is going to happen.
Okay, sir.
sir,
Yes,
Sir.
Venkatesh.
I have a doubt, sir.
Tell me.
So what is the interlink between this Manusmritis and the ethnic countries? Is there any interlink between this Manusmriti and this ethnic countries?
Manusmriti and which
Ethnic
countries?
countries, sir. Ethnic countries.
Ethnic countries.
Yes, sir.
No, I didn't get ethnic. What is ethnic countries?
Ethnic countries means people who promote only a particular tradition, customs. That suppose we can, for example, we can say that if we need a Hindu Rashtra, we don't need other religions within the. Yeah.
True. See, the moment you talk about identity politics or ethnicity or a kind of Hindu Rashtra, then you are not becoming selfless. You are becoming selfish, right? And Monu has prescribed everything to the selfless king, to the selfless subject, and to create an ideal society. And today, this identity politics or ethnicity, they are much more concerned about their own, development rather than being guided in sacrificing for others and creating a, good society or good life, right? So I think Manusmriti, and that's why there is a kind of, and ethnicity or identity politics. There is a kind of understanding that priest, right? So priests are selfish, not selfless. So the moment you discard the very assumption of Manusmriti that priests are not selfless, they are selfish, then you are supposed to see Manusmriti as a kind of uh, communal text, and Manusmriti has to be banned or has to be what I will say burned, right? What Ambedkar actually did. So basically, uh, without accepting priest as a selfless group or category, then Manusmriti becomes a communal text. And if you take that priest as defined by the Manu, if you accept priest in that way, I think there is no point to declare Manusmriti as a communal text. Right?
Sir, I have another doubt. So
Yeah.
nowadays, can we consider Manusmriti is a valid one?
Of course it is. See, if you are having, wisdom and hermeneutics, orientation, then you can understand. I mean, suppose you are having a very difficult book in your hand and you are not able to understand it. Then do you think that that book is not relevant for you? No doubt, it has been written, but there are many aspects in the Manusmriti, and that is also there in the Shanti Prabha. That is also there in the Arthashastra of Kautalya. These are all relevant today. There is something to learn. Maybe we have crossed our moral limitation, and that's why we're thinking that these moral texts are not significant or relevant for a immoral society or immoral politics. So as long as you are keeping yourself within the moral limits, then there is something to learn from all these, Samhita and Dharma Shastra. But unfortunately, yeah.
So I have counter question for your this statement, sir.
Mhm.
So you are supposing this is a valid one. So can we consider if there's a when in Manusmriti they are clearly saying that it's exploits few group of people for their beneficiaries. So they're exploiting, ultimately legally they're exploiting the few group of people. So then if it is even though exploiting, we consider as a superior one. So it is legal one or it's illegal.
Now, who is superior in the Manusmriti?
Yeah, people, I saw that the Brahmins are the superior one here.
Now, why
And
Brahmins are superior? I also
they
mentioned that. I also
yeah,
mentioned that this. True. I also mentioned somewhere this priest, right?
yeah.
This priest, this priest are considered as a complete and perfect example of mankind. Now, who is that priest? I defined
He's ultimately
priest.
ultimately from a higher caste only.
Priest. No. Not higher caste. Actually, he's talking about Varna, and in the Varna there is a kind of mobility, social mobility, and everything was not decided by the birth. Rather than it was decided by the gun or the karma, duty, work, what you do, right? And the person who knows the Brahma, the God inside him, the person who realizes the purpose of his life, the artha, the meaning of his life, the person who understands the God inside him, he can understand the God in others also. So a person who understands God inside him, how can he will be selfish? He is always selfless. Now, who is selfless? He is a Brahmana. Who is selfless? He is a Brahmana. And there may be some people, they are very much selfish. Maybe they are taking birth in the Brahmana family. But maybe for Manu, they are not Brahmana. Brahmana are basically, they are virtuous, they are complete, and they are the perfect example of mankind. So anybody who is perfect, anybody who is having the virtue, anybody who is having the control over his or her 6 or 5 senses, anybody who is well versed with Vedas and Purana, he is a Brahmana. Right, Venkatesh?
Yes, sir. So my last question is that what was that Manu's view on that this hereditary system, like Brahmanism
Now,
and Kshatriyas, Vaishyas?
I will not answer. I think we have 5 classes more to deal with the Manu, and I will take this question. Let me go, more into the Manu,
Okay.
so that we will see whether Manu is offering any other, argument, so that I can deal your question, in a right sense.
Okay,
Today
sir.
I will not answer.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I am stopping this recording.